Good afternoon, everyone. It is a fantastic, a little cold Sunday here in St. Louis, but ball watching, we are back. It's been a while, Justin, probably the longest gap we've had between episodes in quite some time now. And I know you're doing it all today with NFL Sunday and everything else going on. The Blues are also on, so we appreciate you all joining us here today. Justin will be with us as soon as he can here, but we are here to do what we're going to really focus today on city player ratings. There was so much to look at this season, so many different players that we feature, and we're going to do our best to break down the grades. We're going to hand out for each of them. Justin's gone through and tried to pull some interesting, insightful stats on each of them as well. So we have some cool angles. So we'll do the eye test as well as some quantitative here, Justin, for player ratings. But before we get into it, I want to say, Justin, how was your Thanksgiving? Happy Thanksgiving again to everyone. Hope it was fantastic as we head into the bulk of holiday season here.
It was good. It was exhausting. I think I slept for like 11 hours last night just to kind of recoup and stayed in. And sorry that I dropped Jake. I think I have too many things open as far as stats and different websites and all this. So hopefully we'll be able to stick through it. But how was yours? How was Will?
It's good. First Thanksgiving, man, for all my dads, moms, families out there, it's a lot. The people want to have their slice of the little one now. So it was a lot. We definitely sacrificed his bedtime a couple of days here. So mom and dad have been paying for it. But we're getting there. We're getting there. So I'm excited. I'm a big Christmas guy. And what better way to channel that than into hope for the holidays? Guys, we talked about this. We introduced it on our last episode, which is now what, 2.5 weeks ago, something like that. Okay, if you haven't heard, I don't know how, you must be living under a rock. We were in STL Magazine in their newsletter with the editor, Mike Miller, put us on there. So shout out to Mike. We've been pumping it on socials, but we are hosting a holiday-themed fundraiser, and it's called Hope for the Holidays. It is on December 11th. So if you're listening to us now live, you have a little bit of time to listen to us on Monday when the pod comes out. You have 2 weeks. Exactly 2 weeks to go and acquire your tickets. So let me share screen here with the flyer we have made for you all with our excellent artistic skills. This has really been a test to flex on some of these over the past couple of weeks, but we're finding new skills we didn't think we had, Justin. I know.
And the one thing we should call out on this too, Jake, is shout out to Ryan Haskins for putting together the actual logo for Hope for the Holidays presented by Ball Watching. But then, yeah, between me and Jake trying to like edit this PDF, it's taken more time than like the entire season has to like for us to record these things.
Yeah, we might be looking at interns here coming up. But, yeah, Hope for the Holidays, obviously presented by us here. So Justin and I are the ones planning this. It's no shadow ghost planning agency. We are bringing in some help that are going to be some needed muscle for the long haul, the final stretch here. But this has been our baby. This has been our idea for the last couple of weeks, even months now. We are having this, like we said, Monday, December 11th from 6 to 9 at the Pitch Athletic Club and Tavern at 2 South 20th Street. You all have probably seen us there before. It's a frequent spot of ours, our favorite sports bar here in St. Louis, and it's always great. The people are fantastic, and they're excited to have us and have you all and get some more faces in there. So how do you get here? One, you got to go buy your tickets. So we have about, I'd say, a little bit over 100 tickets available on Eventbrite. So if you go to the link www.ballwatchingstl.event, BRITE.com, Eventbrite. It's a common, ticketing software. You can go purchase yours. We're putting the links out too. So if you didn't catch that, don't worry. You can definitely go find it easy. They're $80. And Justin, there are some reservations. I get it. $80 might seem like a pretty big order to come see Jake and Justin and a bunch of our friends and family and any one of our watchers here. But tell them what they get with this package.
So basically, Jake, the one thing I will say too is with this, everything is going to the Foundation for Barnes-Jewish for the Head and Neck Cancer Fund there. So it's not anything that we're trying to make money on. Everything that we will get on top of whatever the costs are, and we're even still eating some of that cost ourselves, is going straight to them. So $80 might seem like a lot, but like Jake said, catered food, premium open bar for 3 hours. You will also get exclusive raffle access. So we'll talk about some of the things that we'll be raffling off here in the next week or two. We're also going to have a presentation from the doctor in chief of the head and neck surgery, there, so that so you can actually understand where the money is going to and why it's such a big deal for us. And we're going to have a roundtable with some of the bigger stars, I'd say, in St. Louis sports.
Yeah, and Justin, I'm gonna share screen again with. We have a little bit of an announcement for you all. Anyone that's tuned in live, this is the first time we've talked about this, so thank you all here for joining. But we have been able to acquire some pretty cool guests for you all for this event, and I'm going to share here, and we're going to do a little drum roll, Justin, and talk about. We're looking for more panelists. We're not done yet, I would say, but we've got two awesome people joining the show that we could not be more excited about to have. So without further ado, I will share screen here and we will jump into the presentation. Our first guest, some people might have guessed it, none other than Robert Thomas. You're living under a rock if you haven't heard of who he is. Absolutely crushing it for the Blues this year. He is one of our alternate captains, number 18, playmaking, absolute beast out there. Fast facts about Rob. Obviously, we've talked to him before. He's from Aurora, Ontario, Canada. Was drafted 20th overall by the Blues in 2017. He's a World Junior champion, a Stanley Cup champion, and a one-time ball-watching guest. I mean, look at the triumvirate. What a resume we have here. And not to mention, dude, Rob is on fire. At the time of recording, they're actually playing right now against the Blackhawks. But as of right now, team leader in goals with 8 and assists with 12. So we have the Blues' best player right now currently coming to this event. I mean, come on. What else do you want?
And Rob's an awesome guy too. Like you said, we've already had him on. One of the most humble guys, and just a really nice guy to get to know. And so really excited to have him. And just a little background on this roundtable for everybody. This is not going to be like a formal interview. This is going to be more of a conversation with them. And it's going to be in front of everybody. So you'll get a chance to be that close to Robert Thomas, kind of hearing him talk about St. Louis and sports and kind of the holidays and everything across the board. So very excited to have Robbie on.
100%. And submit your own questions, which we'll get to as well. But second guest, Kyle Hebert. It would not be a city themed or city fundraising or anything around City Hall without someone to represent the club. And we have Kyle Hebert graciously joining this panel as well. Two Canadians, Justin. Crazy way to start, but a native of Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. He was a one-time Manitoba Soccer Player of the Year, two-time Mac Herman Trophy Award finalist. We all know about that with Missouri State. He appeared in every match. I think he played all but 4 minutes with City 2 in their first season. And, dude, the guy's got obviously a pro degree. He's got a pro contract for 2 years with us. So next year will be his second year. And he's got a bachelor and master's in accounting. So, I mean, the guy's just foolproof. So for last season, though, he started all but 10 of our MLS matches and made an appearance for Canada's men's national team. So I've heard awesome things about Kyle. I'm so excited to have him on the panel here as well.
Yeah, he did an interview not too long ago with KSTK and kind of talking about the things that he's doing in the community. And one of my favorite things about him is, and I am also an accountant as well, he has memorized extremely long digits of pi. He can solve a Rubik's Cube. So I'm just excited to I think we're going to have to incorporate some of this into this as well, but extremely excited to have Kyle on as well.
I am too. So like we said, those are two of the building panelists right now. We are going to hopefully have a couple more for you all as well. Trying to get more the merrier. Obviously, it's the Christmas season, the holiday season. The more the merrier is very true in this sense as well. But those are the first two we can give to you all. We have some other workings in the works. So stay tuned for some of that coming up as well. But hope for the holidays, guys, you can't miss it. It's the one time you can connect with us and everyone that listens to the show and the fans of City and, do it for a good cause for the foundation of BJC. And, I think cancer is probably pretty personal to everyone out there in some form or fashion. Unfortunately, whether it's family, friends, what have you. So let's all channel that into something that's really, really cool and trying to build, an important partnership with the community and hopefully change people's lives. So we'd love to see you all out there.
Yeah, there's a number of local companies that are also becoming sponsored for this and attending, which we really appreciate. And we will be talking about them in abundance at the actual event. But we'd be remiss, Jake, if we didn't mention two of our favorite ones on here as well, or three of them actually. The Pitch, one for letting us use the space, helping us out, and they're so excited to be able to do this with us as well. So get to the Pitch if you haven't already. Sunday football. If we weren't recording, I would be there right now, just like I am on my couch here, because it's the same thing when you get there, just with frozen Irish coffees. So get to the Pitch. Thank you very much to Jenny and Blaze and staff for helping us there. Shout out to Soul Juice. Luis is going to be donating a basket for raffle there as well, and to be and some additional funding on it, and providing Soul Juice to everybody that's in attendance as well. So if you haven't gotten Soul Juice, go to souljuice.com. get it for 20% off using code ball watching. You can also get it in Deerbergs. You can get it in Sam's. They just went off in Straub's in St. Louis too. So continuing to expand there. We're extremely excited. And shout out to Series 6. They will be opening up on January 3rd at their new location in South County. And we are just extremely excited to be having Sammy and team work with us on some of the apparel as well.
We are. And Justin, I'll take a little break when we get through our part of this to talk about our newest sponsor as well. We want to talk about because we're getting to this part of the season. But before we do, Justin, let's tee us up here. So, I mean, the bulk of today's session, we're going to talk a lot about MLS, of course, with City. But I want to just cover off quickly for those that have kind of unplugged since, we got eliminated from the playoffs. They are still going. It's been a long playoff time already because we've had this 2-week international break that just put an end to everything, at least for a pause. But if you're not following, let me just speed run you through. So we are in the conference semifinals right now. So there are 8 teams remaining. As of last night, there are now 6 teams remaining. So there's 2 matches last night or yesterday. And it was Columbus Orlando, which was a awesome game to watch. Orlando had an early red card in the first half. Sorry, not early in the first half, but they had a first half red card. But they played Columbus super, super close. I will say, Patrick Schulte, holy cow. What a star, St. Louisan. So cool to see him stand on his head, make 3 huge saves late in the game for Columbus as they eventually were able to topple Orlando 2-0 in overtime. So a very, very fun game to watch, and gotta love the St. Louis roots there.
I mean, it's absolutely awesome seeing how well Patrick Schulte is doing, just being, what is his first full season, second full season? I feel like
he played their number 2 team last year. He's best goalie in the league. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And so him standing on his head in overtime when it means the most to their team is absolutely awesome to see. Shout out to TK for all the work that he's done with him for that as well.
And then game 2 was in the evening featuring your Supporter Shield winners, Cincinnati. And wow, that game, personally, I don't think it was as good as the first game, but they played Philadelphia. And it was a pretty nervy game, I would say, and a lot of drama towards the end. There was a 90-plus minute stoppage time goal to win this match. Devastating for Philadelphia to concede in that fashion. There is some controversy swirling around about an potential offsides call and VAR. I think a lot of the frustration, Justin, from what I'm seeing online, I didn't watch towards the end of that game, but looking back in the replays, I just think the angles in the replays, no one's seeing something definitive that really tells them whether it was clearly offside or onside. So there's a lot of frustration out there amongst the Philadelphia supporters. So feel for them a little bit today. But since he played the better team, they're without Miazga because he was an idiot in their last game, and they're moving on though. So they're on to the conference finals against Columbus. So I mean, that's going to be a fun matchup to watch. I'm really looking forward to that. I think Columbus could topple them potentially.
Yeah, so that's next Saturday at 5 p.m. Cincinnati is even money to win the game. Columbus at plus 235, the draw plus 240. But before we even get to the rest of all of that as well, you have the Dynamo versus Sporting Kansas City tonight. Dynamo are at home, minus 125. That's at 6 p.m. And you have the Sounders at home versus LAFC, and that is plus 145 for the Sounders, plus 185 for LAFC.
Yeah, so tune in, people. I mean, I will say the games are fun. I know it's not our team's playing, but the games are fun to watch, especially the first one yesterday. So I'm hoping today lives up to the same hype. But just let's talk about our team, the home team, City. Let's pull out the highlighters, the red markers, and let's talk about these guys. We did this every single recap, but now let's kind of pull it all together and look at a season as a sample size. And let's talk about how we feel some of these players did throughout the entire season.
Yeah, so let me share my screen as well, Jake. So like you said, did a lot of digging here as far as trying to get some interesting stats and not only comparing it to our team and kind of filtering to see how each of the guys did for our team, but then also kind of comparing that as well to the MLS as a whole. So, and the one way that I want to explain this to is, and because I know there's probably multiple different ways that you can really think about this, but we broke it out into tiers based on minutes. So when you think about it that way, we have 3 total tiers, and then there's like a 4th tier of guys that played like 20 minutes, but I would say a minimum of 270 minutes or 3 full games played when you add it all up together. So that'd be a minimum of 10% of the season. That would be how we're looking at these tiers. So tier 1 are the players that had played 20 plus games in total. When you take their total minutes divided by 90, that's 9 players. Tier 2 is between 11 and 20 games. That's 8 players. And tier 3 is between 3 full games and 10 full games. That's 7 players. And then we'll mention out and just round it out with the 4th tier for guys that didn't play 3 total full games once we get there.
Yeah, I mean, so Justin, I was shocked. I mean, people forget about some of these names that made into certain tiers. So I think we're gonna run up against a couple, hard realizations and some interesting things as we get into this exercise. But obviously, number one on the tier one has got to be our number one, and that's the big man, Roman Burke. I mean, I could almost make this as quick as we need to, because anyone that's saying he didn't have an A+ season is speaking a different language at this point. I mean, the guy was exceptional, one goalkeeper of the year. So, I mean, everyone that was chirping before he came in here is making too much money. This is not how you invest money in MLS, and he's washed up, and he was the bench at Dortmund. Well, look what you have now. You have a fired up, angry goalkeeper who is exceptional with his feet, shot stopping, absolutely sublime. I mean, that's Roman Berkey for you, wrapped up.
Yep, and I think we'll try to keep a little structure to this as well. So I try to add in a couple of the best stats and worst stats. I would say for Roman, well, Jake's got his acronym. What is it? Post shot XG minus plus
Yep.
shots. I'll let you take that one here in a second. But one of the ones that I wanted to note, with Roman being 33 years old, he only played one game less than the Red Bull and Austin goalkeepers for most minutes in the league, and that's because we let Ben Luke go up there in Vancouver after we locked it up. So only Steve Clark, who plays for Houston, who's 37 years old, played the exact same amount of minutes for Roman. But otherwise, every other goalkeeper that played within that range, well below Roman's 33 years old. The one thing I'll say for worst stat, and it's not even that bad of a stat, but it's just one that kind of stuck out to me. His pass percentage was 57.3%. So he completed 574 out of a total 1,001 total passes. However, so it's 57. You're like, yeah, he probably had a ton of long balls, which he did. So he was second in the league in most successful long balls. However, when you look at that passing percentage in a goalkeeper standpoint, he is the 20 of the 22 top goalkeepers with minutes played, so a minimum of 24 games. He was second worst in passing percentage. So the rest of these guys, when we look at some of these numbers, we're looking at 72%, 66, 76%, 68, 67, 63, 77%. So that's something that I would like to see be a little bit stronger.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing that improve either. I think I chalk a lot of that up to just taking chances a lot more than other goalies do. But if you're gonna, I'd rather him shoot more often. What I mean, like, shoot your pass, like go for it, versus being conservative, which I feel like a lot of the goalies tend to be. But again, yeah, I mean, interesting stats for sure, and it just paints the picture for a fantastic season from Roman.
Yeah, absolutely. So final grade, A+ for my book.
A+
Jake,
for sure.
You as well. All right, next on our list for second most in minutes played. So Roman, I didn't mention it there, but he played 2,970 minutes. So that's 33 full games played, and he started all 33 of those games as well. Tim Parker, 2,565 minutes. That's 28 and a half total games played. When you divide it by 90, he played in 29 total games, and he started those 29 games as well. I would say his best stat for me, Jake, that I was actually kind of surprised by, only 9 turnovers in the entire season. I think some of those were a little bit heavier in our mind, but only having 9 as a center back is pretty impressive.
No, there's a reason that he was in the MLS Defender of the Year conversation as a finalist. And I think, yeah, it just, for some reason, I agree with you. Some of the errors or turnovers did kind of resonate, maybe more than they should have in terms of quantity. But I thought he had an exceptional season. He's very comfortable with the ball at his feet as well. I think we take that for granted. Not every defender does that, by the way. So to have a defender that can, stick one in, like we've seen him do time and time again, that could also be very comfortable playing with his feet. Also, not to mention, Justin, the goals from the man this year. I mean, 4 goals this season. I mean, that put him into the conversation for some of our, our crop of goal scorers this year. That's insane from a center back. So I think Tim Parker as well. You talked us through some of the stats, but his passing, his defending. I mean, for me, I think he's another A guy. Absolutely for us this season.
Yeah, and I know he did have 85% on passing percentage, and people will be like, well, he only played a lot of short passes. He still had 280 accurate forward zone passes, which when you compare that to some of the guys in the team, I would say Kyle Hebert had 226, and some of the defenders, he's still right up there. Jared Stroud only had 260. So he had more accurate forward accurate zone passes than some of the other guys. Yes, there's more minutes there when you look at that, but just another kind of plus for him. The one thing I will say that I want him to improve on is the 10 yellow cards. That led our team, and it tied for third most in the MLS. So I think we need to clean that up a little bit. But when you're a horse like Tim Parker, it's just kind of hard to stop that train every now and then.
I agree. A horse and a beast in the air. So shout out to Tim. I think that's definitely an A performance for me.
A as well.
Edu Leuven is our third logged. 25 starts out of 29 games played this season. So ton of minutes coming over from a season where I don't think he had as many before. We all know about Leuven. I think he started exceptionally well, and I think a lot of that ran through probably the first 3 quarters of the season. And I think we kind of saw not the wheels come off, but we saw not the best version of him towards the end of the season. And maybe that was a result of different things, but he was a dangerous player. I mean, you just looking at a guy like him in central midfield, I mean, he averaged 0.23 goals per 90, which you don't really see that stat for central midfielders very often. So I thought that was really exceptional. He takes a lot of chances with his passes as well. So he landed in around the 75-ish pass completion percentage. He took a ton of shots. Him from set pieces is a thing of beauty. I want to see that continue into next season. My God, he had 79 shots this season from the central midfield. I imagine a lot of those came out set pieces because he was our guy. He was our go-to guy. And he connected, Justin. You had the stat in here about accurate forward zone passes. He created a lot as well. So he was great defensively, but I also think we leaned on him, especially in the early part of the season, in my opinion, to get us going up top.
Yeah, sorry. My Wi-Fi almost went out, and it's because I'm streaming 2 other NFL games, so I'm turning those off right now. But I will say one of the other impressive stats here, Jake, is and something that I think we might be probably one of the few teams in the MLS. Everybody that took a PK scored it. We did not have any misses in PKs. He was 3 for 3, so I think that was impressive on his part. The one thing I would like for him to clean up a little bit, but it's tough when you think about where he plays in the field. He was second most in our fouls committed this year, just behind Nico. Nico had 43, he had 42. And then also he had 60 turnovers this year, which is second most as well, just behind Nico, who had 73. So I think when you look at that, but when you kind of offset that, because there is a story to tell in all these, he was second most in duels this year as well at 380, just behind Nico at 381. So it shows how much those guys have the ball at their feet. And I thought overall, he's had an incredible season. Like you said, I do love that he was doing 0.55 assists per 90 minutes, which led the team in third most in the MLS. So overall, in my opinion, Edu Leuven, A+.
Yeah, I think it'd be A+ too. I mean, he easily could have been newcomer of the year as well for me. Like he just an exceptional season and one that I think a lot of people weren't expecting from a guy coming over from abroad that hadn't had the pedigree of a lot of people that do come over from abroad. So I think it was really great to see him come to life, and a lot of the haters were sitting on their thumbs at the end of this season watching Edu just crush it. So I'm excited to see another full season of him. Jake Nerwinski is one that probably pretty polarizing, I would say, as we put out here. So Jake, obviously 4th most minutes for the team this year. He started 24 of 27 games that he appeared in and logged, over 2,000 minutes. Jake, as a right back, you look at the stats, I pretty much can comfortably say he lands about average in most of the categories that we get into from a passing, defensive, and offensive perspective. I think Jake's just one of those players where when you don't talk about him, that's a good thing because he's doing his role. He's not standing out for any one reason or another. He's just a steady Eddie in the back. And I will say my favorite moment from this season was when he lost his role. Obviously, I wasn't there, in practice or in training, but for his ability to get that back and earn that back, it takes a lot for a coach to go against the grain and to play a guy that's Akil Watts was in form for a good chunk of the season, the middle to latter part of it, and Jake was able to come back in and grabbed it by the throat. So I think one that we're going to see competition in this space. I have a feeling, but I do think that he had a solid season. If I had to put a grade on it, I'd probably say a B, like a flat B for me.
Yeah, when looking at this, and we kind of have these filtered, I think I put it up on our story. There's a lot of different colors when you look at how you're filtering this on like where they fit in within the rest of the guys in the team. I will say overall, I think, what did I actually give him? I gave him a B+. And because that's what's kind of surprising me. I feel like he fell off a little bit towards the end of the season, but he is still, what is that? 4th most in minutes on the team behind Berkey, Parker, and Leuven. So when you think about that, he played almost 25 full games in 90 minutes. And I will say one of the other stats that I appreciated in this as well is we know that he likes to get forward. He was 3rd most on the team in accurate forward zone passes. You got Leuven at 1 with 665. Then you got Indy with 380 at number 2. And then he was number 3 with 350. So I think it really shows what he can be as a right back.
I agree. I definitely agree. So let's move on to Kyle Bieber. Obviously, going to be a panelist here for Hope for the Holidays. But Kyle played a little bit of both center back and left back for us this season. So asked to do a lot in terms of positional kind of variance. And Kyle, again, I kind of have a similar story for me with Jake Nerwinski is both those guys, I feel like, are your really true type defenders. They don't venture forward too much, but they're hard nosed and they'll get in on tackles. And I think Kyle played a similar role to Nerwinski, just on the opposite flank in that light. I will say that Hebert was on the field for a couple clean sheets. He was good at intercepting the ball and reading. He had 38 of those this year. He's in the company echelon per se of guys like Tim Parker and guys like Blum, so he's kind of in the way often for opponents. But otherwise, I mean, he had a lot of back zone passes. Like I said, he's not a very progressive type defender. He is more of like I'd say, just a very solid rock there in the back, and one that, you're happy to watch play because came up through C2, undrafted in the MLS Super Draft, and look at the value we're getting from him. I mean, he played in that many games. That's insane. 27 appearances in a 34 game schedule, and this is a guy that no one was looking at, a year or two ago. So awesome story. I love this.
Yeah, shout out to Missouri State Bears. I think he was one of the ones that had a stronger start of the season as well, and then fell off. But he was still third in the team on clean sheets. You had Berkey with 8. You thought Tim Parker was 7, and then he was 6. So knowing that he was that strong of a pairing, I think was extremely impressive for him. And like you said, he's not as progressive getting forward. So looking at his accurate forwards on passes, he only had 226 compared to Nerwinski's 350. But his accurate back zone passes, which I think is where he can really hold it and keep and swing the ball around, that's where he had 394. And that's well above average on our team. It's over Leuven, just under Berkey. And I mean, Tim Parker has the most just with the amount of minutes he played. But overall, I thought he had a great season. I gave him, what did I give him? I have 2 docs up. Sorry. I gave him an A-. Just when I'm looking at these stats, I understand that I think that's where some people are going to fall off on this, is forgetting how well Kyle Hebert played for us at the beginning of the season. And don't let the recency bias get to you. Don't forget about March and April and May in that time period when he was playing there. So overall, I give him an A-.
Yeah, I mean, I would say my last thing there is my favorite moments of him this season was him when he was anchored at the back with Tim Parker in the very early part of the season. He looks like an awesome duo, an awesome pairing, and they got us off to immediate success. So that was really cool to watch him just hit the ground running with us.
Yep. Next one, Jake. Indy Vasilev. So he played in 34 games, started 25 of them. Total 90 minutes when you add it up is just under 24 games. For him, I just think that he was one of the more creative guys that we look at on the team. So he also had the most attacking assists, total attacking assists. And like basically that's almost like a hockey version. So he had 34 of that for our team. That's just behind Leuven with 37. I think that's one of the more impressive stats for him there. And then also, I forgot to mention, also Kyle Hebert had 2 goals, which I absolutely love to see out of him. And then Indy also had 2 goals this year as well. So I think overall, there's not a whole lot that's really red here for Indy. It looks like he's more above average when we look at these, Jake. Pass percentage, 78.6%, which I think is impressive for where he plays on the field and how attacking he can be.
Yeah, I agree. I don't have much to say about Indy. I think some of the reason that maybe you see less productivity is he was just bounced around so much, different positions in the field, based on need. Not even his fault. I mean, kudos to him for being a very utility-like player. I look forward to seeing a little more consistency in where he's deployed as we move further into this, next season. But I think he's a huge cog in our system, and I'm excited to watch him progress. I think for me, following his Miami loans from Aston Villa, I'm going to probably give him a B+ as my rating because I want to see more. I don't think it was the finished product, but he's got it in him. So I think he's capable of absolutely getting an A.
Yeah, he was one of these guys I feel like turned it on half of the season as well. Most of the team with crosses with 24 behind Leuven with 36. And obviously a lot of those are coming from their free kicks there. But overall, I thought he was a good spark plug. I would like to see maybe a little bit more on the finishing side of things with only having 2 goals in the season. But overall, I thought it was a great first season for Indy. Like you said, after he bounced around a little bit. Nico.
Oh,
you want to take this? Yeah, I'll let you go first.
It's a fun one. So we put striker, and I put SS here. So for those who know, second striker, I think that's where he plays the best, is when he's not the point person up top. So think of your Klaus or your Adeniran as a little bit more advanced ahead of him, and he supplies. But Nico started 24, but appeared in 32. So he was featured in almost every game that we played, which, there's a reason for that. He had 10 goals in the season. Most of those came when he was covering for Klaus, the big man. But Nico, a very efficient player. When you look at goal output, he scored 0.43 goals per 90 this season, which is one of the highest on the team outside of Joao, his striking partner, and a really good offensive output. I mean, the guy also gets fouled and chopped down time and time again. I think he was the highest of fouls suffered this year with 62. That's nuts. I mean, the guy was on the deck a lot. But he works his tail off, which I appreciated about him. And in terms of someone that gets the system and gets what's expected of him, look at a stat like duels, going in there with an opponent and trying to win the ball and going body to body, super physical. He led the team with 381. We talked about Leuven being our big duels guy. Nico just had one more on him. So both those guys, but I think Gio, you know, I say Gio, but I guess we could use Gio. But yeah, Nico, Gio, Joe Aquini, whatever you want to say. I think he embodies a lot of what we are trying to do as a team. And I want to find him more of that role that's just carved out. Like it's perfect for Nico. And I really do think that looking at season 2, if we don't make big additions up top, I think Klaus Nico is my preferred partnership.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to get that connection back. I think it was great for him to have 10 goals when we look at that for the season. The things that I would like for him to pick up on, like you said, 62 fouls suffered. He also committed 43 fouls, which actually led the team, which is so in front of Tim Parker with 42. So the fact that Tim still only, or sorry, Tim only had 30. Leuven had 42. But the fact that Tim had 10 yellow cards and Nico only had 2, but still had 13 more fouls than him shows him kind of like a little bit of some of the lighter fouls and also the positional size of those. Nico also had 10 offsides, which led the team as well. So I want to make sure that he stays on a little bit more there. And then he had 73 turnovers. I think we saw that a couple times in the season with him trying to be a little bit more individualistic as opposed to kind of passing it off. So once he loses that, but like you said, with 381 duels leading the team, that's something that you really like to see him get stuck in on. And I like the way that he was able to finish this year with 0.43 goals per game, like you said, which is technically third. We'll talk about Mr. Sam Adeniran as well later on line, who was number 1 on the team.
Looking forward to it. What'd you give Nico, Justin? I might have missed it.
Oh, that I gave him a B+, which might be a little harsh, honestly. After I may have done these, but kind of changing it as we are going through it, I might give him an A-, just because like having a guy that still scores 10 goals, but not with only playing 24 total 90-minute games, I think that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I'm torn between those two, like high B, low A, because it wasn't consistent enough. Like because there was the pre-Klaus injury, then there was with Klaus, then there was post-Klaus injury, then there was, I don't know, there was just different phases and you saw different versions of him depending on the opponent, I think, as well. But that work ethic never stopped. So I'd probably lean more towards the A- with room to grow for sure.
Yep. This next one's an interesting one as well, Jake. When we talk about guys that had different first halves and back halves or different chunks of the season. So Jared Stroud, played in almost 2,000 minutes this year, so that's just above 22 full 90-minute games. He played in 31 of our games and started 25 of those. I would say the majority of those starting were on the first 15 games is when he really made his staple there. And you were talking about him. I think early on he had like 4 goals in 12, 15 games. Yep. And then he kind of fell off to where we didn't see him at all and then came right back at the end of the season for the playoffs. So kind of overall what I kind of have for him here, that's some of my favorite stats is he still had 44 shots in the season, which is, that's third most on the team, tied with Nico, and behind Leuven, who had 79. But otherwise, there's not a whole lot of other impressive stats here for me. He did have some accurate forward zone passes of 260. He still had 55 turnovers, which is up there for top 5 or 10, probably top 5 on the team as well. And then his conversion rate. So his shot percentage on goal was only 40%. So when you think about it, every time he tried to rip a shot, it only hit it 38% of the time. And then scoring only 11% of those that were actually on target as well. But he did have a 10 goal plus assist ratio, which shows the kind of the work ethic that he had throughout the season.
Yeah, again, qualitatively for him, I agree. Statistically, doesn't pop off the page to you. I think another system type guy, and in terms of value that we're getting, obviously he was thrown away essentially to Austin, left to rot on the bench, wasn't even getting in. And the fact that he logged that many minutes for us, think about Justin, think about it in Cardinals perspective. We're talking about how not sexy these new signings have been with bringing back Lynn and Gibson now. But people are like, oh, well, they're inning eaters. They're gonna get you through the season. They're not gonna get injured. They get through games, one way or another, even though they're getting shellacked. Stroud for me was a guy that in our first season we needed something steady that we could count on, that knew the system, and whatever he chipped in was just bonus land. for me. And I think he chipped in with some great goals and assists, especially early on in the season. And I think we got used to seeing that. And then we were like, wait, where did that go from halfway onward? But I think a guy that logged pretty big minutes for us that ended up being pretty key. But you wonder if this is an area we're looking to reinforce or bolster moving forward.
No, I completely agree. And so overall, what would you give him, Jake?
I'd give Stroud just because of like the story and being thrown away, just getting him basically for free from Austin. I would say B plus for me.
Yeah, I went back and forth on this when I was trying to make these grades on are we considering like what we got them for?
Yeah.
We think about like an AZ versus like how big of a role they played. I started to anchor myself more on what kind of role they played just because it's a completely different style once you get to a team like this. So I gave him a flat B. I would say maybe first half of the year is a B plus, second half of the year is a B minus. But that's kind of my thoughts for him as a whole. Sorry, you might have heard a little noise there because I was looking up this goal because when we were talking about Joe Blum, I had to see it one more time just to be able to talk about it against Minnesota United, which was by far my favorite highlight of the year, especially afterwards when he talked about how whenever he kicks it, it's a miracle that if it goes in the net. And just looking at the top of the box, cross from AZ, takes a touch, cuts back to his right, and then bends it in the top corner. That one goal of the match day as well for that specific goal. But when we look more at the specific stats on Blum, obviously the one that stands out, as it should, is most interceptions on the team with 49. I think that's extremely impressive and what we need out of him from where he's actually playing on the field as well. And his passing percentage being 83.3%. Not only is he winning those balls, but then finding someone's feet quickly and not having turnovers, which I love to see on both of those.
Yeah, the only person he was less on percentage-wise was Tim Parker, but Tim's probably playing a lot more of those shorter passes, and so is Blum. But Blum is also, I think that to me highlights his ball playing ability, which we also I think we're happily surprised about because he also had some of that creative flair in him as well. He can dribble off of challenges, he can connect play. So I'm looking forward to a fuller season with him. Obviously, he only started 21 games this season for us. Part of that was because his availability and the national team drama that went on and us signing him later on in the season. But he's a young guy. I think he's only going up from here. So I'm really excited to see where he's headed with this. But I'm gonna give him an A for me for the season.
Okay, I'm giving him a B plus just because I do feel like we didn't get to see the full aspect of him, and I was almost a little frustrated with him towards the end of the year as well. Just thinking that he just wasn't asserting himself in the games where we didn't have a whole lot of highlights or lowlights. And I thought when the season started or midway through the season, I was like, this is going to be our guy with the spine as well. When you go from Berkey to Parker to Blum to Leuven to Joao, and I just felt like we were missing that piece on some of those games. So I give him a B plus.
With you, I'm with you, Justin. Before we get into tier 2. I have one more tier 1 to talk about, and that is our newest sponsor of the podcast. And guys, ladies, gentlemen, this is timely. I encourage you to listen up here. We're heading into the holidays. We just came off Thanksgiving. Belt buckle's feeling a little bit tighter than it was a week or so before this. But our friends at City Pilates, they got you covered. Have you ever done Pilates? I've done it once, Justin. Have you done it before?
I have not, and I wanted to get before Thanksgiving with you, but I was traveling for out of work, so I will be going ASAP to this because you were just raving about it afterwards. And like, I feel like Jake's a big workout guy, but you do usually see him like at your Planet Fitness, like throwing some weights around. I don't think of Jake as a Pilates guy, so I was very pleasantly surprised how much you talked about it.
As was I, man. Yeah, I haven't stretched since high school. So this was good for me, but our friends at City Pilates, they're good for you as well. So City Pilates is a brand new Pilates studio just north of City Park. So just northeast, in fact. So just northeast of Shoffley Tap Room. It's on Washington Ave. So it's 1907 Washington Ave for those that want to plug that in and look at it. But they're just getting started, and it's family run. We've met the family. They're fantastic. They love the club. Their son actually plays in the academy as well. And they bleed that soccer, that city red. And I feel like they're really catering to all types of styles and specialties and expertise in this as well. Because I walk in there with my wife, Justin, we go, and like I said, if there's level 1 through 5, I'm level -2 to get started here. So I'm like, be easy on me, like things might tear. So they took the whole curriculum for the class, the hour class. They adjusted my stuff when I needed to get adjusted. They helped others that were a little more advanced than me, challenge themselves more. And I just loved that approachable nature they brought to it. So for me, it was like a great way to like get introduced to Pilates. And I'm not sure all studios do that, but City Pilates is who we're talking about here. And we're going to talk a lot more about them coming up here. But guys, before I stop, I mean, they're looking to get as many members and people like you into the studio as possible, especially around the holidays and heading into the new year where we all have new goals, I'm sure, for our bodies and our health and our fitness and wellness. So if you go on their site, again, City Pilates, you can use promo code ball watching, all one word, for products with a 15% discount. So this only includes single class. This includes 5 classes. This includes 10 class passes. However, if you're the type of person that wants to go out and buy a membership as well, they've been gracious enough to add a second code, ball watching members, all one word, to get a $10 discount on your membership. So for all of you listeners, you can go to use ball watching to get basically your purchase discount 15% off for any single 5 or 10 class passes. And you can also get a discount on your membership, just adding members to ball watching for $10 off. So great deals. I mean, what better time to start turning over a new leaf than this time of year? And City Pilates is the perfect place to go do that at.
Yeah, I would say download the app. I just kind of showed that on the screen as well. The app is extremely nice and just easy to organize. There's nothing harder than trying to go to a workout class where I'm already nervous about attending and I can't figure out how to sign up, and then I just like delete the app. This is not your app. This app is so easy. You pick your date, you pick your spot in the class as well, your trainer, your time. Get out there, get City Pilates app, and go get to a class, especially after Thanksgiving. Jake, my chin is still feeling heavy.
Yeah, everything feels heavy on me, man. We did this right before Thanksgiving. I was so glad because there'd been a lot of weight on those reformers Pilates machines around. So I'm glad I got there before, but I'll be going there here soon.
All right, let's get into tier 2 players. So as I mentioned earlier, these are going to be the guys that play between 11 and 20 full games. When you take their total minutes played divided by 90, these are 8 players, starting off with a surprising one that didn't make the tier 1 just because of his injury, Mr. Joao Klaus. And obviously, I think the easiest one to talk about here, Jake, and I'll cherry pick this, is the fact that he was scoring 0.68 goals per 90 minutes played. I think that is something that we just needed out of a forward. I know he started the season so hot. I would love to have seen what would have happened if he didn't have his injury, with having his 10 goals on the year as well. And then also his shot conversion rate, I think, is one of the more impressive ones as well. So when you think about shot percentage on all the shots that he took, 45% of them landed on the net, which is a good 50% almost. And he scored 23% of the shots that actually landed on the net as well. So converting all of those shots into a 14 goal and assist total ratio on the season was a great job for him for only playing that few amount of games.
Yeah, on a small sample size. Totally agree. He was joint top goal scorer with Nico for the MLS campaign. My other thing I want to draw attention to, Justin, is people think, big man can get up with head balls. But Joao has shown that he can do it, outside the 18 as well. Which I think impresses me. So of his 10 goals, he scored 2 of them outside the 18. So that kind of distance isn't always coming with that type of frame or build that a guy like him has. So he's got a great shot on him as well. He can dribble. He's got great footwork. So I think he's got a little bit more of the package wrapped into one. So I'm really excited about Joao Klaus. I thought he had a great season for the minutes that we were able to see of him. Man, just give me a full season, and I think you could see him easily contending for Golden Boot. So I'm going to give him, obviously it sucked because we missed him for like a good chunk of the season. But for the times that we did see him, I'm giving him a hard A.
I'm giving him a hard A as well. The one thing I would like to see him do is work off the ball a little more. And we talked about it a couple times with some of his body language. But I think once he was on the ball, it was a sight to see. So I was extremely excited to have him here. This is one of my favorite ones coming up, Jake, that I wanted to talk about. Mr. John Nelson, because we love John. The pod loves John. I think he got a bad shake on this, obviously. So, and you think about this, he played the next most minutes right behind Joao Klaus. Like, that really shows you how much of a big impact he was for our team early on. Ended up only playing 14 total games for full 90 minutes, 17 games played with 14 games started. So, and we all know that when we kind of turned the leaf as a team with John, unfortunately, was when he received his red card, and that's where he fell out of the lineup. One of the main stats that I want to talk about here, though, Jake, is the fact that he only had 10 turnovers on the season. When you talk about that, and this is, like we said, this is the guy that has the 10th most minutes on the team. There's only Berkey with 3, which obviously Berkey's not going to have turnovers technically. Parker with 9, and then he's tied with Kyle Hebert. Otherwise, everybody else in front of him had more turnovers in the season that they played. And if you look at guys that have less minutes than him, there are only, when you talk about a guy that's in this same tier, only Lucas Bartlett had 8. Otherwise, everybody else in this tier also had way more turnovers than John.
Yeah, and let me preface this. First of all, everything you're saying is totally true. Obviously, these are stats. We can't make this up. But from the narrative perspective, he gets a really, really bad rap, which I feel like is pretty unfair from really just like 1-2 weeks in the season where it was really high profile with the red card in Chicago. And yes, we're 100% biased. We had him here and he's an awesome guy. We loved chatting with him. But for the problems that we had on our left and right backs throughout the season, the fact that we didn't ever look to bring him back in, and even when Marcanic kind of fell off a little bit towards the end of the season, even after trading for him, once we traded for him, you and I both kind of knew that he was out of the mix, John Nelson. And part of that's, his contract's coming up, so we're probably not going to pick him up again. But I get that. But I also think you got to play the best players sometimes, especially in MLS Cup playoffs. He had appearances for Cincinnati last year in the playoffs. So I was a little bit bummed at how this situation was handled. He kind of ended up, I feel like, almost, about average in almost all the stat categories, defensively and offensively. I think he was a pretty balanced player, both going backwards and forwards, and one that I would have liked to have seen given more opportunity, to be totally honest. So, I'm bummed for how the situation ended up panning out. We're not going to see John Nelson, I would imagine. We'll probably move on, and he'll sign with someone else this season. I hope it doesn't come back to bite us, but I wish him the best of luck. So for this season, just for the sample size that was pretty limited for us that we got to see of him, I'll give him a B+.
I'm also giving him a B+ just because we had, like you said, 14 games and he started all 14 of those. And what he did there, I think after falling off, then it was like we didn't get to see him again. So I think it's hard, and I don't want people to forget what he was able to do at the beginning of the season. So love you, John. That was a fun one. This is also another fun one. We're getting into it kind of like I feel like you and I could definitely start like tossing some grades around here. So
yeah,
Thomas Ostrak, Jake, I feel like I've been cherry picking some of these stats. I'll let you go first on this one.
No, I mean, Tomas was one of my guys I picked to be our MVP or our big breakout player at the beginning of the season or preseason, and it just didn't turn out like that. And I think I can chalk some of it up to he's got to get a run of games as a young player to get going. And I feel like we only really saw him play bit part roles. But for what we did see of him, he had a fairly decent goals per 90 with 0.24, a pretty high pass percentage completion rate with 79. But otherwise, we just didn't see that much of him. And when we did see it, either I feel like it was like, oh, I don't really need to see him again for another game or two. Or we saw like some life. Remember that goal that he scored? I'm forgetting who it was against, but he had a couple goals in this season. Yeah, he had 3 goals this season, and he had 2 assists. So fairly productive in a small sample size of games played. He's a guy that we've put a lot into this signing, I feel like, and we thought we were going to get different output, similar to like a guy like Selmy or Pedro. So I'm really hoping that he gets either another fair shake because he's a young player and he needs development and game time as well. So I could go either way with Ostrak. I feel like his potential's there, but at some point you got to start answering up to it as well. So for this season, I'm going to go either low B, high C for me because it just, for me, it wasn't enough, and I was expecting a lot going into it.
Yeah, I think when we look at some of these stats, just to call out, he was able to have almost 80% pass rate, but nothing's really jumping off the board at me, Jay. Also, what I really did not like, which I'm just now seeing, is that he had 7 yellows on this year, which is 3rd on the team behind Stroud, which we know can rack him up, and then Tim Parker, who played all season. It's like, how did you have 7 yellows but only playing in 14 games this year? So I think that's one of those things that you really got to tighten that up, especially if you want to get playing time, because we can't have guys putting us in trouble in that aspect. And he also definitely fell off when you think about when Indy started playing better. Stroud came in later in the year. AZ was the guy that started taking minutes from Ostrak as well. Sam Adinran coming back. So it's just, we had it was a good problem for us to have, but unfortunately it was not good for Thomas Ostrak. So I'm giving him a C+ in my opinion.
That's fair. I think that's totally fair. Let's get on to a guy that I think we're going to have a unanimous decision on here. AZ and Jackson. I'm just going to start off with A+. The value that we got out of him from training for him from Minnesota, he was such a huge player for the run-in for our season. I'd say from the halfway point onward, basically post-Union Omaha U.S. Open Cup game, we knew that we had a really great player on our hands, and he's just getting started. He appeared in 25 games, only started just under half at 12, but he had 1 goal, which kind of surprised me. 4 assists, though, which did not surprise me. And he was just one of our most all-around creative players. His assist per 90 was 0.32, which is one of the highest on the team this season. And his pass percentage, completion rate was around 80 as well. So you like to see that, especially from a young player who probably takes more chances. This is a guy I think we're at a crossroads with. Do you go another season and give him an extended run in the team and he is your creative guy? Or do you see some suitors come in from overseas and you might be tempted to sell here? So I'm really up in the air on where he's going to land. I really hope he stays here because I think year 2 AZ here at City could be something to watch.
Yeah, I really hope he stays as well. I'm going to give him a flat A, Jake, just because when I was – and this is a guy where I think he does a lot ball than what you see on the stat sheet with his creativity and taking guys with him. And then also, I feel like AZ was thrown in a couple of these games, like in the last like 30 minutes. And like, what do you want him when we're already down like 3-0? Like, what do you want him to do? So that's where he racked up more minutes and was only able to have 1 goal, but still had those assists as well. So having that assist per 90 of 0.32, like you said, is, I want to say, just scrolling real quick, that is 3rd on the team behind Mr. Leuven and behind Mr. Rasmus Alm, who we'll talk about here in a bit as well. So he was a chance creator. You're not going to see it as much on the stat sheet, but I did like the amount of one of my favorite quotes from one of our followers this year was that he's the embodiment of a human fidget spinner, just with the amount of energy he would bring. So I love the amount of energy that he brought, and it's just not going to show up on the stat sheets as much. I am very interested to see, like, do we take the money and run with this guy, or do we just keep holding him and try to pound like what piece of coal into a diamond? So and he's already kind of halfway there, but it's an interesting next year for him.
I would agree. It's an interesting next year for me too for Rasmus Alm. I'll keep this short, Justin. I think what we saw from him is that he can be a very lethal player, both goals and assists this season. He had 13 games started, 21 he appeared in. He had 3 goals, 4 assists, which I'd say is pretty good output for that sample size. But man, he's got to stay healthy. He was such a good shot creator. He's one of our highest, accurate shooters. With his percent of shot on target was 62, which I believe was 1st in the team. So you know that he's got that end product in him, and he comes from a team that was playing in I think either the Conference League or Europa League before. And it's just a matter of availability. Availability is the best ability sometimes, and he didn't have it this season. I want to see that health improve because I think he could be an excellent winger for us. And I feel like we lack that sometimes. He gives us that stretch, that vertical stretch on the right side. So I'm going to have, just because it's not his fault necessarily, but injury, I'm going to give his season a B for me. I think he's capable of A's, but we got to manage those because you can't just be out all the time.
I'm giving him a B-. I don't remember the last time I saw him play a game. And then we even saw him sitting in the stands, unfortunately. And we do have his contract through 2025. So this is going to be a guy that will be sticking around. But I just do we even have information? I just tried to do a quick search. It was like his abs for the longest time. And then I think it was a hernia. But hernia. What was going on in the recovery process there that really threw me off? I mean, that's maybe something else we can talk about later on. But there's not a whole lot else that we can really go for there. I think is just without seeing a full sample size of him. And I think that you need to get healthy. And this is your job. It's not like you have a full-time job during the other 40 hours of the week. You just need to be focused on getting healthy during that time period. So unfortunately, with us not being able to see a whole lot of him, I'm going to give him a B-. I
think that's fair. Next guy we have here, Lucas Bartlett, center back, big role player, came in amidst the injury crisis, early to middle part of the season. I'm painting the picture of what we had to do to get him. He was literally a trialist this season for us. So he was FC Dallas. He was released this past season. His option was not picked up, and we got him for free. And for what he had to do, I think it was fine. I think Bartlett was an okay defender. He had a pretty good pass completion percentage, around 80 as well. And he had 1 assist, which you'd love to see from a center back. And for me, it's the soft stuff. He was a big duels guy, loved to get in the faces, loved to get aerial. But I loved the competitive edge he brought. You could tell that he probably is crawling his way under some opponent's skin. Again, I'm not sure if we'll see him in year 2, just with the depth we already have there, and maybe with some new acquisitions. But for all things considered, I thought Bartlett probably had a B year for me. I mean, I was happy with his performance and his contributions that he made in the time we needed him.
Yeah, I give him a B as well, looking at some of the more important stats. So, and one thing to note, as we get further down the line, this guy is 15th most in minutes on the team. So he still had 4 clean sheets, which is tied for 4th on team, 3rd if you take out Roman Berkey. So thinking about, and I know we have yes, some of the guys that we're talking about are offensive players in that top 15 as well as far as minutes goes, but it's still just impressive when we look at it, when we work our way down the line for that. I would say he only had 8 turnovers as well on the whole season. So everybody that's played more minutes than him ahead of him had more turnovers than him. And so, and also the people that are behind him, unless you want to go to like Josh Yarrow, only had 2, Marketing only had 5, but they had way less minutes. So I think in looking at the small subset that we were able to see out of him, I thought it was a pretty good showing for him, and it was a good kind of rebuild for him after being let go by FC Dallas. I don't know what we're going to do with Bartlett next year, but I kind of hope that he sticks around a little bit and at least keeps our competitive backline, or keeps our backline a little bit more competitive in practice.
Final 2, Justin. I'll let you take Leo, but I'll start with Sam. So Sam's actually last on the tier 2 in terms of minutes played. Sam started at 11, played 18, and he scored 8 goals, 1 assist in that small sample size. Remember, he was sent on loan right before the Klaus injury. So crazy timing there. Maybe these numbers are a little bit different had that not happened, but he came back with a vengeance. He, I believe, led the team with a 0.76 goals per 90. He came back, found his goal-scoring boots, absolutely crushing it. Never was afraid to shoot. He had 35 shots this season, which is on the upper end, I would say, with his sample size considered. Scored all of his goals inside the 18. He's a fox in the box, right place, right time, creates his own luck, gets up and wins aerial duels. He won almost 60% of them, which is great, I would say, when you're winning over 50%. And I just love his performance. He's gritty, and he gives something different to the team. He can create magic on his own. So I think you're selling him short if you're giving him anything less than an A.
No, I'm going to give him an A as well, just on the way that he scored. I'll bring him down and then talk up Celio. You can bring Celio down if you'd like, but passing percentage for Sam is 58%. The only person worse on the team was Mr. Roman Berkey. So that's one of those things when we talk about Sam, he does get downhill and gets in behind guys, but you got to clean that up when you're a hold-up striker with a size of a body like him. Hold the ball, dish it out to Nico, Stroud, one of the guys below you. He didn't do that as well enough this year. 7 offsides. That's second most on the team behind Nico as well. But, I mean, it's just hard to look past him having those 8 goals in such a small time frame of, what do we say? So of the total games he played, full 90s, he only played 10.5 games. So he's almost averaging, like you said, it was 7.78, 0.76 goals per game. It's just hard to keep a man off the field when you're playing like that. So the only thing I would like to see out of him is a little bit better on the passing side of things. Celio Pompeo, very similar in my opinion, Jake, when we're looking at stats here. And you know that I love Celio. It's hard to talk up some of these guys because they're not as much of a stat stuffer as they are as a creativity guy. So, like, I would say a lot of those guys, when we're looking at, like, short passes, like, for them, it actually means more because once they dish that short pass, they're in behind another guy or they're flicking somebody in. I think those mean more, and it's harder to see it on the stat side of things. But Celio, he only had 1 goal this season, and he also had 2 assists as well. So a little bit on the low end on that side of things as far as stats go, but I love the energy that he brings. I'm going to give him an A just for the minutes that he played. There was nothing where I was like, wow, that was absolutely awful by Celio.
I think that's fair. And I think he's earned himself an extension or a new contract with the club as well. Both of them, Celio and Sam, are both out of contract end of the season. So I think they both have earned their way to another year. Finally, Justin, I know we're reaching time here for tier 3. So let's do a unique exercise. 2 minutes left. We're trying to keep this to an hour. We've got 6 guys on this list. Josh Yarrow, Akil Watts, Anthony Marcanic, Miggy Perez, Nilsson, Thorson. I'll go on the defensive side. A lot of these guys, I think Yarrow has earned himself to come back into year 2. I think we saw great times filling in for any one of our center backs. I think he's a very steady, athletic player as well, great passer of the ball. And he knows what it means to play for City. So I love his leadership in the back there. Akil Watts, going to be interesting to see what happens here. I think they had him listed as a midfielder going into the season. Obviously, he's a right back now. And I don't see him flexing into midfield. So I'm really interested to see how that unfolds for him. We got Marcanic at left at the trade deadline to replace Nelson on the depth chart, I would say. I don't know if he's the answer entirely, but I have been happy to see what he's brought to the team. A little more offensive going forward, very fearless as well, and also very young. So time to develop. So I love seeing that from him, and he has a fire in his belly as well. But how about Miggy, Nilsson, Thorson, Justin? We got a minute left. What are we going to say about them?
I would say Miggy, not enough time. We can get to see him there. I mean, his 1 goal was one of the highlights of the year, just knowing how excited he was. He put his hands on his face, didn't even know where to run, went to high school the next day. Nilsson, led the team in passing percentage, 86.9%. I know he had a smaller amount of time this year, but I think it's still just impressive to talk about with him and one of those guys that will be a staple next year. Unfortunately, I do think that means that Josh Yarrow gets less time. And then we look at Thornton. Not going to lie, pretty disappointed in that. And the fact that we just didn't get to see him on the field. I was pretty hyped. And we talked about, like, they put out right when they signed him, like the Thorson bangers, and then just hitting long shots and scoring goals. And we just didn't get to see enough there. So I don't want to knock him for any of his percentages on that. I would say out of all of these guys, I'd put him, I was just looking through it. I gave them pretty much all a B, except I gave Thorson a B-, and I think I gave Marcanic a B+.
I think that's fair. There's a whole other crop of players too. If you go to our tier 4 slide, that like guys that played very, very small bit part roles here and there, that, you know, we may or may not see. John Bell, Jensen, Ben Lunt, Caden Glover, John Klein, Samir Pedro. Not all of them are. I mean, Ben Lunt will definitely see back next year, I would imagine. We're definitely going to see more of Caden Glover and Isak Jensen. John Bell, Pedro, I don't even know about. John Klein, I would love to see back as well. But guys that just had not enough minutes to consider even in this exercise. But guys that, you know, you could be excited about depending on where you sit with some of these. So a lot of great players. Justin, this was hard for us because there were so many players. Not every team has the same exercise because they play a smaller sample size of players. But we had such a big rotating cast. So it was fun to go through it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we'll definitely see some more of Johnny Klein, Caden Glover, Ben Lunt. We won't see as much, but hopefully sticks around. Pedro and Jensen are out on loan. John Bell, I don't know if we'll hold on to him, honestly, just with having Yarrow, Nilsson, Parker. We have Bartlett. We have we're kind of thinking about there for all these Kyle Heberts. I mean, all these guys that can already play center back. I don't know if we'll see John unless we try to play him as where we put like a Watts there. But we will have another episode to talk about what we're doing in the offseason with the super draft, guys that we could possibly re-sign or not sign or look to sign free agency or into the draft as well. So we'll kind of include a couple of these guys in that as well.
Absolutely. Well, that wraps up City's 2023 player ratings. Hope you all enjoyed a good hour extravaganza. But in the meantime, guys, homework. Go get your tickets to this event. We have to really get headcount pretty nailed down here soon to make sure there's enough food and drinks for everyone. Of course, we can't have anyone going hungry or thirsty during Hope for the Holidays, but would really love to see you all out there. It's been our pride and joy the last couple of weeks. We've been sinking a lot of work and time into it. And then hopefully this is kind of our gift to you in the holiday season. So make sure to go out, get your tickets. We'll put it out there. But go to Eventbrite, look up Hope for the Holidays. It's going to be an exceptional fundraising event, hopefully raising a lot of money for the foundation at BJC. It's going to be awesome.
Premium open bar, free food. You're going to have some STL celebrities there when it comes to sports. When you're looking at with some of these guys, we're going to have the round table, working on a couple other ones as well. We'll keep you guys posted, but come out and enjoy it. It's just a fun time to just kind of talk city and just talk St. Louis sports and the holidays. Jake's favorite holiday is Christmas.
Yes, it is indeed. Awesome. Well, everyone, hope you have a great, fresh week heading into the 1st of December. It's nuts that we're already this far here. Tune in to MLS Cup if you haven't. It's pretty exciting as we're rounding this out. And we'll be with you all soon here, but hope for the holidays. It's coming up. Get your tickets now, and we'll see you all there. Take care, everyone, and we'll talk to you soon.
All for City.
All for City.